I rise to make a contribution to the Cafe Killer Bill, a bill that is just another example of a government creating more red tape for small businesses that are already struggling to survive. Increased energy costs, skyrocketing rental costs, rising insurance premiums, and the ongoing pressure of high interest rates. You see, many cafes right across my electorate, they operate on razor-thin margins. Every week when I'm travelling across the electorate, I stop in a different town. You know, we've got Nambucca or Urunga I stopped in at the weekend, Kempsey, my hometown, Crescent Head, beautiful places. All those places, you've got to go there to get the best coffee and you've got to know which ones to go to. But they all operate with just a very small margin, and, you know, the owners are struggling. They are really pushed, and they're constantly worrying about whether they can absorb the next increase in costs. We saw wages go up, you know, again, and they're trying to keep staff employed. They're trying to keep the prices affordable for their customers, and to keep their doors open so that they can keep employing and putting food on the table of their employees. And the last thing these businesses need is more government bureaucracy, more red tape, more compliance requirements, more paperwork, more penalties. It just doesn't end. And yet that is exactly what Schedule 4, brackets 3 proposed, and proposed Section 34C of this bill do. You know, this legislation is simply not practical. It's completely unworkable and demonstrates a misunderstanding of how small hospitality businesses up and down the coast operate. The hospitality industry has made it clear that it supports customers bringing their own reusable cups. And I mean, even the cafe in the Parliament encourages you to bring reusable cups. And many cafes, you know, they already do it. The proposal requiring cafes to accept clean reusable cups from patrons from 2028 is sensible. It's just about already being done. It's not the issue. The issue is the proposal that cafes must offer and operate a reusable cup reuse scheme. And Labor is expecting small businesses to purchase, store, manage and potentially clean reusable cups and comply with an entirely new regulatory regime. All the while, who absorbs the cost? It's not the government who's forcing the red tape on them, it's the businesses. And how can the government seriously expect us to take on the extra workload that the administration are required in as well? How can you expect mums and dads that are stressed to the hilt, that are, you know, already pushed, that are already struggling with cost of living, to buy this new reusable cup, which is more expensive each time? How can you expect them to remember the same cup every time? Sometimes we're going to make a little error. We're rushing to work, we're getting the children to school, we're travelling between appointments or working hard. We might be running farms, businesses, or just simply trying to get through the day. Most Australians, they do remember their cups, and sometimes we don't. You know, we can't remember to bring it everywhere we go, and I think it's an unreasonable expectation by the government. Because when that happens, when that unthinkable happens that you forget your coffee cup, the cost and the administration is going to fall back to the cafe and the customer. And what really concerns me the most, I think, is the extraordinary amount of red tape within the bill. That's going to continually fall on a small business. That might be a mum and dad small business. It might be a hole in the wall with one employee. That young person trying to work through the red tape, and that's a little bit loud from the other side, guys, just a little bit lower.
Members to my right, I was just going to say that. Can we just reduce the audible noise,
Because
please?
I really need to make sure that I get my point across. It's about red tape. And what's happening in this bill is 30 new or amended legislative provisions relating to record keeping, compliance obligations and penalties. These are mum and dad businesses that I'm talking about. That's 30 additional layers of bureaucracy. How are we going to cope with that? And it's exactly the sort of red tape that frustrates operators and makes it harder for businesses to survive. And instead of focusing on serving their customers, owners will be forced to focus on compliance in a large scale. And instead of growing their business, working on their business to be better, they'll be worrying about whether they have breached another government regulation. Because a barista who fails to offer a reusable cup, maybe by oversight, could then expose a business to a $22,000 fine.
Shame.
That would break a small business in my electorate. And that bill even allows the EPA to become involved in monitoring compliance and requiring businesses to demonstrate that reusable cups meet the requirements of the scheme. Now, imagine being a small cafe owner already struggling with rising costs and now having to worry about regulators turning up to inspect compliance at the drop of a hat. But then it comes as an unreasonable, it's untested, this scheme. So there's an additional pressure and fear on businesses on details that aren't even settled yet. And this government is asking Parliament to support a scheme while simultaneously saying exemptions may be needed later. We'll work out the details later, just trust us. I tell you what, I don't. Because if they're not finalised, why would you introduce the legislation right now? Don't you have time to work on it? I mean, we are creating small...
Can we just stop the clock for a minute, please? Members to my right, if you want to continue to conduct conversations, please go outside. Thank you.
The level of conversation is creating a bit of uncertainty to me, but that's not anywhere near in comparison to the uncertainty that this bill will create for small businesses. And in our communities, cafes are often much more than just another business. They're where we catch up. They're where we get our social, requirements. They support our local jobs. Maybe a young person that's putting themselves through uni or TAFE, and they're getting paid enough to get their fuel so that they can then go about and live their lives. It supports tourism, a key component to our economy. And at a time when fuel costs remain uncertain, when consumer confidence is under pressure, when tourism operators are concerned about reduced spending, and the last thing we should be doing is placing another burden on hospitality businesses. The Coalition supports practical environmental outcomes. We support sensible recycling initiatives, and we support customers bringing their own reusable cups. I'm the first person to provide a war on waste. We need to reduce our waste through smart and sensible solutions. But we do not support forcing small businesses into a costly, complex and unworkable government-mandated reuse scheme. There's 30 additional layers of red tape, and that is why the Coalition is proposing the removal of Section 34C, because right now this proposal creates oodles more red tape, more compliance costs and more uncertainty for small businesses that simply cannot afford it.
Speak up.